Lily loved collecting dolls. Her room was filled with them. Big dolls, small dolls, dolls with curly hair, and dolls with glassy blue eyes. But there was one doll she had never played with. It sat on the top shelf, covered in dust. It had a pale face, dark eyes, and a stitched mouth. It looked old, much older than her other dolls. One day, while cleaning her room, Lily's mother noticed the doll. "Where did this come from?" she asked. Lily shrugged. "I don't know. I think it was already here when we moved in." Her mother frowned. "Strange." She took the doll and placed it on Lily's bed. "Why don't you play with it?" Lily didn't like the doll. Something about it made her uneasy. Its black eyes seemed to follow her whenever she moved. That night, she placed it inside her toy box and closed the lid tightly. In the middle of the night, Lily woke up to a soft thumping sound. It was coming from the toy box. Thump, thump, thump. Her heart pounded. She sat up and turned on her lamp. The sound stopped. Slowly, she got out of bed and walked to the toy box. She opened the lid. The doll was sitting on top of her other toys, its head tilted slightly, as if it had just moved. Lily gasped and slammed the lid shut. The next morning, she told her mother about the noise. It was probably just the toys shifting inside, her mother said. Nothing to worry about, but Lily was not convinced. That night, she put the doll in her closet and locked the door. At midnight, a loud creak woke her up. The closet door was open. The doll was lying on the floor, facing her bed. Lily screamed and ran to her mother's room. "There's something wrong with that doll," she cried. Her mother sighed and followed her back to the room. The doll was still on the floor. "You probably didn't close the door all the way," she said, picking up the doll. "Look, it's just a doll." She placed it back on the shelf. Lily didn't sleep well that night. She felt like the doll was watching her. The next morning, she decided to get rid of it. She took the doll outside and threw it into the garbage bin. She felt relieved. That night, she slept peacefully until a whisper, a faint giggle. Lily's eyes snapped open. Her breath caught in her throat. Sitting on her dresser was the doll. It was back. Tears filled her eyes. She ran to her mother's room again. "The doll, it's back. It's haunted." Her mother groaned and got up, but when they went back to Lily's room, the doll was gone. The dresser was empty. "I don't have time for these games, Lily," her mother said, rubbing her eyes. "Go to sleep." Lily was too afraid to argue. She climbed into bed and pulled the covers over her head. The next morning, she searched her whole room. The doll was nowhere to be found. Years passed, and Lily grew up. She moved to a new house and forgot about the doll, but sometimes, late at night, she swore she could still hear a soft thumping sound. Thump, thump, thump. And once, just once, she thought she heard a giggle. Rahul had always thought of himself as a rational man. Ghosts, spirits, and the supernatural were just stories to him, until he was forced to quarantine alone in his Delhi apartment. It all started on the third night. He had been feeling better since testing positive for COVID-19, but isolation was driving him mad. The nights were the worst. The silence of his apartment was almost unbearable. But then, something strange happened. As he lay in bed, trying to sleep, he heard soft footsteps in the hallway outside his bedroom. At first, he thought it was just his imagination, maybe a neighbor walking in their own apartment. But no, these footsteps were inside his home. His heart pounded as he sat up, straining to listen. The sound stopped. He got out of bed and slowly walked to the door. Taking a deep breath, he turned the knob and peeked out. The hallway was empty. He flipped on the light. Nothing. His apartment was locked from the inside, and no one else had a key. Shaking his head, he told himself he was just tired and went back to bed. The next night, the footsteps returned. This time, they sounded even closer. He sat up in bed, gripping his blanket tightly. "Who's there?" he called out. No answer. The air felt thick, almost like something invisible was watching him. After a few minutes of silence, he forced himself to lie down, but it took hours before he finally drifted off to sleep. On the fifth night, Rahul was video calling his family. His mother was worried about him being alone. "Are you sure you're okay, Beta? You look tired." "I'm fine, Ma. Just bored," he said with a weak smile. He didn't want to tell her about the strange noises. she would only worry more. As he talked, he noticed his mother's expression change. Her eyes widened. "Rahul, who is that behind you?" A chill ran down his spine. He quickly turned around, but there was no one there. His hands trembled as he turned back to the screen. "There's no one here, Ma. I just saw something, a shadow. It moved behind you," she said, her voice shaking. Rahul laughed nervously. It's probably just the light playing tricks, but deep inside, he knew something was wrong. That night, he decided to record himself while he slept. He set up his phone on a chair facing his bed and pressed record. If anything strange happened, he would see it in the morning. The next day, he hesitated before playing the video. Taking a deep breath, he pressed play. The first few hours were normal, just him sleeping, turning over occasionally. But then, around 3 a.m., something happened. His bedsheet started to move. At first, it was just a small twitch. Then, slowly, it began sliding off the bed as if something was pulling it. Rahul's body remained still, unaware of what was happening. His blood ran cold. He rewound the video and watched again, hoping he had imagined it. But no, it was real. His breath came in quick gasps. He turned on every light in his apartment and sat frozen on his bed, heart pounding. The next night, he didn't sleep. He kept the lights on and sat with his back against the wall, watching and waiting. The footsteps returned, louder this time, stopping right outside his bedroom door. He held his breath, gripping his phone tightly. Then, the doorknob turned. A shiver ran down his spine. He grabbed the closest object, a glass of water, and threw it at the door. The sound echoed through the apartment. Silence. He ran to the door, flung it open. Nothing. The hallway was empty. But the feeling of being watched grew stronger. That was the final straw. The next morning, he packed a bag and left to stay with a friend. He didn't care if he still had to quarantine. He couldn't stay in that apartment any longer. A week later, he returned to collect his belongings. The apartment felt different. The air was heavier. As he walked into his bedroom, his eyes fell on the mirror. There, in the reflection, was a dark shadow standing right behind him. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Also, hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.